Welcome to the Podium Pod, the Pick and Roll's national basketball podcast, as we continue the road to Paris 2024. I'm Adam Webster, and I'm joined today by Pick and Roll feature writer Hayley Wilds. Hayley, thanks so much for joining me for the very first time this season on the Podium Pod.
Good to be here, and even better after a good Opals win, a solid win in a warm-up game there.
Was a solid win, 75-66 in Segovia against Spain. We need to talk about a lot of different things about this game because we've had quite a few games on the Boomers side of the ledger, and we've had a lot of episodes of the Podium Pod covering those games. There's been a lot of drama. There's been some selection concerns. Not quite the level of drama on the Opal side, which is nice. It's all been relatively smooth sailing, but at the same time, they just don't have the time to be able to form the team, the rotation, the squad that they really want to take into Paris. They have to make some really quick decisions.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously the WNBA season does stop for that month to let teams sort of get together. And yeah, the Opals having so many in the WNBA speaks volumes of how good the team is, but also, yeah, it does throw sort of a different aspect to team building. And obviously they've all played together at different times, so they do sort of bond together pretty well. But yeah, it's as this initiation of an Olympic squad, it is their first time together, and it was a pretty impressive hit out, I thought.
So 75-66, it wasn't without a little bit of a scare late. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, I want to talk about the performances that we had on the court. Sammy Whitcomb had 14 points. She shot 4 of 8 from three-point range. She also had 6 assists, so a very strong game by Sammy. Alanna Smith, you've been championing Alanna Smith on Twitter lately. You've been driving hard that she needs to start. She needs to play big. We'll talk about her front court partner in a moment, but I want to ask you about Alanna Smith firstly, fellow Tasmanian. I'm coming to you live from Hobart, so we love to see Tasmanians succeed. But brilliant, 12 points, 5 of 7 from the field, 11 boards. The defense, the interior presence, the ability to be able to get things going inside and stop Spain from being able to get on those runs. She was fantastic.
Yeah, and that 12 and 11, the double-double, it's sort of what she's been doing in the WNBA all season for Minnesota, and it's just carried over. And she, like you mentioned, she's such a presence inside, and with Magbegor's beside her, it's a great duo. But yeah, I thought especially Smith in those last couple of minutes there when the game was there to be won, she was massive on the defensive end. I think she had about 3 or 4 sort of stops or helped get a stop which led to the win, I thought, in the end. So she was massive on both ends. And when you can get a double-double out of her, and then Magbegor was just shy of a double-double with 9 and 10, I think. So if those two are sort of getting double-doubles, it's going to lead to good things for the Opals, I think.
Well, you talk about the defense. There are a couple of players that were missing from the team that sort of imposed that defensive identity on this team. Steph Talbot and Beck Allen were both missing, and that caused someone like Jade Melbourne to be able to step into this starting lineup and run the point, run the team. She finished with 12 points. She finished with 4 assists, but most importantly, for a player that is still relatively young in the game, going into her first Olympic Games, she belonged out there. What did you think of Jade's performance?
It's what we've seen from Jade for a number of years now, and she just keeps doing it at a higher level. She's done it in WNBA, she's doing it in the WNBA this season. When she gets on the court, her minutes are always strong, and now she's doing it in a warm-up game for the Olympics. And I think it speaks volumes for the player that she's going to become, that she's already doing it at the age she is doing it. Incredibly, she still is the youngest player in the WNBA in her second season. So she's just going to get better and better. And yeah, I thought she really belonged out there, and especially early, she brings that energy. I would have thought maybe in the Olympics she'll bring that energy off the bench and provide a bit of a punch, which will be a great role for her. But if she gets a start again with maybe a player out here or there, you know what you're going to get from her with that energy. And I think that energy also leads on to the defensive end, where she might not be the best defender out there, but just having energy and moving your feet and always being ready to contribute on that end is enough most of the time.
We've got to reference Ezzy Magbegor before we move forward to the players that missed. 9 points, 10 boards. Alanna Smith and Ezzy Magbegor is a imposing defensive front court. Do you see that being the front court that's carried through this whole tournament? And is that the point of difference and strong defensive front court that Australia need to play with against, particularly, we're going to be talking about the US a lot across this tournament because they're the standard bearer, but against the likes of Team USA, that's the front court you need.
100%, yeah, and I absolutely think they should be the starting front court there. And Smith's earned that right now, and we know Magbagor has too. She's been dominating for the Opals for many years, but I think Smith has earned that right. And I know Sandy singled out Alanna after the game to say how well she did play. So I'm hoping that sort of leads to even more minutes for Smith. And as you mentioned earlier, I've been high on Alanna Smith and pumping her up, and I think she deserves all the minutes that she gets for the Opals. And when you look at that American team, they're obviously sort of a level above with the star power and just the depth that they have at the front court. But when you look at China, the 2 games against them a couple of weeks ago in Melbourne, without Smith and Magbagor, the Opals more than held their own against Han Xu, who has been a massive sort of rival of Australia for a number of years now, and she didn't look quite as intimidating as she has in the past. So hopefully that sort of leads to good things. And then when you look at who are the other teams in our in the group, Canada, they have a good front court too. So there's good front courts all around, but I would back ours in against most of them, to be honest.
I want to ask you about the players that missed, Steph Talbot and Beck Allen. Those two, you would assume, would go into the starting lineup. What does the starting lineup look like for you heading into that first group game against Nigeria on Monday?
Yeah, it's interesting. And obviously we didn't maybe get the best look at the starting lineup in the game against Spain, but tomorrow's game against Canada, we might see those players play. So you might see them come off the bench or start. But I would like to see those two. Yeah, I'd like to see Wickham, Magbagor, Smith, and then also, Talbot and Allen. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Sandy does go with more of a traditional point guard to start things off. Maybe chuck in maybe a Melbourne I'm not sure Madgen's ready to start. I don't know. She hasn't played a lot in the last couple of years, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sandy does go with a more recognised point guard. But on the other side of that, you have Talbot and you have Wickham, who are more than capable of sharing that load. And what the Talbot we saw at the 2022 World Cup was magnificent, and she sort of led the Opals from the front in both sort of the scoring and the assisting. So it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to the starting lineup that Sandy does go with.
We also heard that Beck Madgen is playing tomorrow, so she may very well start. It depends how many minutes she plays, obviously. But, we should see Steph Talbot, Beck Allen, Tess Madgen. But we also could see Izzy Ball-Ace. And we've talked extensively about Izzy Ball-Ace on Unwrapped, the Pick and Roll podcast on Fridays, Hayley, and her growth. We've had her on the show as well. You've written about her extensively. I'm really interested in your view of Izzy Ball-Ace because, still young, 19, 20 years old, only just drafted, but hasn't quite gone to the WNBA yet. We've seen great success across different programs with taking younger players to the Olympics for the experience. We saw it with Team USA 12 years ago with Anthony Davis in 2012. He was just drafted as well. We saw it with Spain in 2008 with Ricky Rubio. So we've seen teams take really young players across to these major international tournaments so that players can have the opportunity to experience that, to be able to grow into the culture and become the leaders of tomorrow. Do you see Izzy playing a role in any of our group games or more? Or is this more of a case of, we need you to be here, we need you to experience this, we need you to know what this is about so that you're ready come Los Angeles?
I think it could be sort of a bit of both. Like, she's going to be there ready to contribute. She's proven herself in the WNBL against many of these Opals players. And I think when you look at her season last year, she was an All-Star 5 member and a really sort of almost an MVP level type of player. So she's proven what she can do. But I'd love to see her have a role sort of off the bench where if maybe something's not quite working, you can throw her in and she's going to drive to the bucket like she always does and just create opportunities. So I think she's definitely there to obviously get that experience because she's going to be there for the many more Olympics to come, which is exciting to think about. But I think she's going to be ready. If her name's called, she's always ready. So I think it's exciting that both her and Melbourne are both there for this one together. and they're going to lead the Opals forward for the next decade.
Well, leading the Podium Pod this season is Team Feet. We are brought to you by Team Feet. Team Feet offers premium athletic socks for modern teams, however they compete. With sweat wicking cotton, arch support, ventilation panels, and compression stitchings, Team Feet socks are built to outperform. Whether your team is tiny or 1,000 strong, Team Feet unites and excites your players and supporters with their combination of quality and performance. Join basketball teams around Australia and the world by choosing Team Feet. For designs and worldwide delivery, head to teamfeet.com. So, Hayley, when it gets down to it, we've got probably an 8-9 person rotation that needs to be deployed as part of this tournament. Who are those players for you? We won't have you on the show until the group stage, so I won't have a chance to put you on the spot, but I want to hear who those 8 to 9, maybe 10, I might give you a little bit of license to add another one. Who are those players that are part of this rotation and get consistent, good quality minutes in the group stage?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one because when you look at the squad sort of assembled, all 12 players are more than capable of playing. And even when you look at Atwell and Kunek, who are just with the squad now, is sort of maybe there if an injury happens before the tournament. But it's sort of hard to see. But I do agree with maybe the Borlays one is just sort of on the edge and she might not quite get the minutes that others do. But when you look at the sort of front court, maybe Atolo is sort of the last option there now, which the many years she's put in for the Opals, she's been a stalwart and done incredible things for the Opals, but she was the last sort of big out in the game against Spain. So it's sort of maybe an interesting one that she might not quite get the minutes that she has in the past. But having said that, she in the second half, she played plenty of minutes. So Sandy's really going to have a tough job of sharing the minutes and finding minutes for players that are used to minutes. So I think it's an interesting one that maybe, I do think maybe Tolo and Borlays are the two that sort of do find themselves on the outside of the 10. But having said that, having those two as your last two options is an incredible sort of thing for Sandy to roll out.
Yeah, and it might be a case of the first two games are strong victories, and then in that third game, you can extend the rotation and give some others a chance to contribute, give some others a chance to be able to have some minutes. So, by the time the France game comes along, maybe there's a little bit more of a license to extend the rotation. But then again, maybe not. You want to be able to put your best team on the floor for as much of this tournament as humanly possible so that they get used to playing together and so that they can win together. The ceiling for this Opals team is a medal, and the expectation is probably a medal too. So how hard is it going to be able to balance rest, rotation with experience and getting these players out there on the floor together?
Yeah, and I think also another player that will be key in that sort of area is Madgen. She may not play the minutes that she has in the past, but she's the best leader the Opals have had for many years, and that's saying a lot about her because the Opals have had great leaders, but Madgen's just, since that 2021 Olympics, which was pretty disastrous and nothing went right, she's stepped up and she maybe hasn't played in the last 2 years as much as she would have liked to because of injuries, but she is there at the forefront leading this team forward. And even if she's playing 5 minutes or 15 minutes a game, she's having a massive influence on the team.
Absolutely. So it's going to be really difficult to ascertain who plays, who doesn't. The Canada game later on this evening as we record this is going to be a big preview of that. We're going to see a lot about what does this rotation potentially look like. But for now, a really strong victory against Spain. The other thing I want to talk to you about, though, before I let you go, is that fourth quarter, because that fourth quarter was scary. The Opals just dried up completely. They could not score anything. There was a lid on the bucket. They were making defensive lapses. They were giving Spain open corner threes, offensive rebounds. It was diabolical at different points there, and it was head-scratching because they were so strong for the remainder of the game.
Yeah.
What do you think about that sort of fade out across that fourth quarter? Because if that happens in a week's time, then we're looking at a team that could be out of the Olympics.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It can be a bad 5 minutes that is the difference between a medal or not medaling. But I think maybe the positive way to look at it is that it happened in a warm-up game And now the Opals know that you cannot take 5 minutes, even 2 minutes, because it started within 2 minutes that sort of they got on that run, Spain, and it was sort of the momentum shifted, and then it was just all guns blazing from then for Spain. So I think it is sort of almost a good thing that it happened in a warm-up game, because they realize now you can't take a minute off. So hopefully we don't see that against Canada, and hopefully it's smooth sailing the whole way through.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be there every step of the way. We'll obviously bring you another episode tomorrow night. Myself and Tom Hirsch will sit down and talk about that Canada game, and we'll be coming to you directly after the games against Nigeria, Canada, and France, and hopefully a lot more games than that, quarterfinals, semi-finals, and medal round for the Opals, because as we've said, the expectation is that this team is a top 4 team in the world. This team can make it to the semi-finals, and if things break right, they could potentially be sniffing a gold medal game. But Hayley Wilds, thank you so much for joining me tonight on the Podium Pod.
Thank you, and go Opals.
Go Opals. We'll see you tomorrow night after the Canada game. Thanks so much for being with us.